The Zarthak Offensive. The vast emptiness of space erupted in a dazzling display of light and energy as the Zarthak warships tore through the fabric of reality. Their sleek biomechanical forms emerged from hyperspace, immediately assuming attack formations around the human colony world of New Eden. Commander Krelvor stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion, his compound eyes gleaming with anticipation. "Status report," Krelvor chittered, his mandibles clicking softly as he addressed his second-in-command. Sub-Commander Zixera's exoskeleton shimmered with bioluminescent patterns, conveying a mix of excitement and deference. "All ships have successfully transitioned, Commander. The human defenses are scrambling, but their response is inadequate." Krelvor allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. The Zarthak Imperium had been steadily pushing humanity back for the past 3 solar cycles. What had started as a border dispute had quickly escalated into a full-scale war, with the technologically superior Zarthak gaining the upper hand at every turn. "Commence the attack," Krelvor ordered. "Let us remind these primates of their place in the galactic order." The Zarthak fleet surged forward, their organic hulls pulsing with energy. Swarms of fighter craft, looking more like mechanical insects than vessels, poured from launch bays. The human defenders responded with a barrage of missiles and energy weapons, but their efforts seemed almost pitiful against the Zarthak's advanced shielding technology. On the planet's surface, Colonel Sarah Martinez watched the battle unfold from the command center of New Eden's primary military installation. Her face was a mask of grim determination, but inside, her heart sank. They had known the Zarthak would come eventually, but not so soon, and not in such overwhelming numbers. "Ma'am," a young lieutenant called out, his voice cracking with stress, "we're detecting multiple dropships entering the atmosphere. They're going to attempt a ground assault." Martinez nodded, unsurprised. "Activate all ground defenses, and get me a secure line to Earth Command. We need reinforcements, and we need them yesterday." As the battle raged on, it became increasingly clear that this was no mere raid. The Zarthak were committing significant forces to take New Eden, and humanity's defenses were crumbling. In orbit, Commander Krelvor watched with cold satisfaction as his forces systematically dismantled the human resistance. "You see, Zixera," he said, gesturing to the tactical hologram, "this is why the Zarthak are destined to rule. Our technology, our very biology, is superior in every way. These humans, for all their vaunted adaptability, are nothing more than a speed bump on our path to galactic dominion." Zixera's bioluminescent patterns shifted to indicate agreement, but there was a flicker of something else. "Doubt? Concern. Indeed, Commander. Though I must admit, the humans have proven more resilient than our initial assessments suggested. This is the 3rd major offensive we've launched, and still they resist." Krelvor's mandibles clacked in annoyance. A futile resistance, nothing more. "They simply haven't accepted the inevitability of their defeat, but they will learn, as all inferior species do." On the planet's surface, the situation was growing desperate. Colonel Martinez barked orders as she moved through the chaos of the command center, trying to coordinate what remained of New Eden's defenses. The Zarthak ground forces were pushing steadily towards the main population centers, their advanced weaponry tearing through human armored units like paper. "Colonel," a communications officer called out, "I've got Earth Command on the secure channel." Martine steeled herself before activating the holographic display. The stern face of Fleet Admiral Chen materialized before her. "Report, Colonel," the Admiral said without preamble. "Sir, the situation is critical," Martines replied, her voice steady despite the dire circumstances. "The Zarthak have committed a full invasion force. Our orbital defenses have been neutralized, and we're losing ground rapidly. Without immediate reinforcement, New Eden will fall within 48 hours. Admiral Chen's expression remained impassive, but Martinez could see the weight of command in his eyes. "I'm sorry, Colonel, but there will be no reinforcements. We don't have the ships to spare, not without leaving Earth itself vulnerable." Martinez felt as if she'd been punched in the gut, but she maintained her composure. "Understood, sir. What are our orders?" "Hold out as long as you can, but your primary objective now is to evacuate as many civilians as possible. We're initiating Protocol Omega." The blood drained from Martinez's face. Protocol Omega was a last resort measure, authorizing the use of nuclear weapons to deny the enemy their prize. "Yes, sir," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. As the communication ended, Martinez allowed herself a moment of despair. Then, squaring her shoulders, she turned to address her staff. "You heard the Admiral. We have a new mission. Let's save as many of our people as we can." In orbit, Commander Krelvor received reports of the humans' increasingly desperate tactics. They were consolidating their forces around major population centers and spaceports, clearly preparing for a mass evacuation. "Shall we move to cut off their escape routes, Commander?" Zix Era inquired. Krelvor considered for a moment, then shook his head. "No, let them flee. It will demoralize the rest of their species to see refugees pouring in from yet another lost world. Besides, we have bigger prey in our sights." He pulled up a galactic map, zooming in on a familiar blue-green planet. "Earth," Krelvor chittered, his tone filled with anticipation. "The human homeworld. Once we take New Eden, we'll have a perfect staging ground for our final assault. This war is entering its endgame, Zixera. Soon, very soon, humanity will kneel before the Zarthak Imperium." As the Zarthak forces pressed their advantage on New Eden, neither they nor the retreating humans realized that this battle, decisive as it seemed, was merely the prelude to a much greater conflict. In secret laboratories and hidden bunkers across human space, a plan was taking shape, one that would challenge the Zarthak's technological superiority in ways they could never have imagined. The fall of New Eden marked not the end of humanity's resistance, but the beginning of its most desperate and ingenious gambit yet. Project Excalibur. Deep beneath the surface of Mars, in a facility so secret its existence was known only to a handful of individuals, Dr. Ilara Chen paced anxiously. The cavern-like laboratory hummed with activity, filled with the world's brightest minds working tirelessly on humanity's last hope. "Dr. Chen," a voice called out, breaking her from her reverie. "The latest test results are in." Ilara turned to face her colleague, Dr. Raj Patel, a brilliant materials scientist whose expertise had been crucial to their work. "And?" she asked, unable to keep the tension from her voice. Raj's face broke into a wide grin. "We did it. The nanofilament structure is stable. The blade can cut through Zarthak energy shields like they're not even there." A wave of relief washed over Ilara, followed quickly by a surge of excitement. After months of setbacks and failures, they had finally achieved a breakthrough. She walked briskly to the testing chamber, where a mannequin fitted with a captured Zarthak personal shield stood. "Show me," she commanded. A young technician stepped forward, wielding what looked like a cross between a medieval sword and a piece of high-tech equipment. The blade gleamed with an otherworldly sheen, its edge rippling with microscopic movements. "Activate the shield," Ilara ordered. The Zarthak shield sprang to life, enveloping the mannequin in a shimmering field of energy. These shields had been the bane of human forces, rendering conventional weapons useless and forcing close-quarters combat, where the physically superior Zarthak held the advantage. The technician took a deep breath, then swung the sword in a wide arc. There was no resistance, no flare of energy as the blade contacted the shield. It simply passed through, cleaving the mannequin in two. A cheer went up from the assembled scientists and engineers. Ilara allowed herself a small smile. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said, raising her voice to be heard over the celebration, "we've just changed the course of this war." Hours later, Ilara sat in her office, composing her report to Earth Command. The implications of their success were staggering. For the first time since the war began, Humanity had a weapon capable of reliably penetrating Zarthak defenses. Her computer chimed, signaling an incoming transmission. Ilara accepted the call, and the holographic image of Fleet Admiral Chen materialized before her. "Dr. Chen," the Admiral greeted her, his usual stern expression softened slightly by what looked like hope. "I just reviewed your preliminary report. Is it true? Have you actually done it?" Ilara nodded. "Yes, Admiral. Project Excalibur is a success. We've developed a melee weapon capable of bypassing Zarthak energy shields. The nanofilament edge vibrates at a frequency that allows it to slit between the energy particles of the shield." Admiral Chen leaned back, a look of wonder crossing his face. "A sword," he mused. "We're going to fight back against the most technologically advanced species we've ever encountered. With swords. Technically, they're more like vibroblades," Ilara corrected gently. "But yes, in essence, we've developed a modern version of one of humanity's oldest weapons." The Admiral's expression turned serious once more. "How soon can we begin mass production?" Ilara hesitated. "That's the catch, Admiral. The production process is incredibly complex. We can't simply manufacture these in factories across Earth. Each blade requires careful calibration and integration with its power source. We can increase output, but we're talking hundreds, maybe a few thousand units per month, not millions." Admiral Chen frowned. "That's not enough to equip our entire military." "No," Ilara agreed, "but it might be enough to form elite strike teams. Soldiers specially trained to use these weapons could spearhead assaults, disable Zarthak defenses, and open the way for conventional forces." The Admiral nodded slowly. "A modern-day Knights of the Round Table," he mused. Then, making a decision, he straightened in his chair. "Dr. Chen, I'm classifying Project Excalibur at the highest level. We need to keep this secret for as long as possible. If the Zarthak learn of this development too soon, they might find a way to counter it before we can put it into widespread use." "Understood, Admiral," Ilara replied. "What are your orders?" "Continue production and begin training a select group of soldiers in the use of these vibroblades. I'll handpick the candidates myself. In the meantime, we'll launch a series of diversionary attacks to keep the Zarthak's attention divided." As the transmission ended, Ilara leaned back in her chair, the weight of responsibility settling heavily on her shoulders. They had created a weapon that could turn the tide of the war, but now came the challenge of using it effectively. Over the next few weeks, the Mars facility transformed. A section was cleared out to create a training area, and soon the first group of soldiers arrived. They were an elite group, drawn from special forces units across Earth and its colonies, each chosen for their exceptional skills in close-quarters combat. Ilara watched from an observation deck as the soldiers got their first look at the weapons they'd be using. There was skepticism at first. These hardened veterans had seen how ineffective traditional weapons were against Zarthak technology. But as the demonstrations began, skepticism gave way to awe, and then to fierce determination. One soldier, a towering woman with close-cropped hair and eyes that burned with intensity, approached Ilara after the initial briefing. "Dr. Chen," she said, snapping to attention. "Sergeant Maria Hawkins, I just wanted to say thank you for giving us a fighting chance." Ilara nodded, touched by the soldier's sincerity. "You're welcome, Sergeant. But remember, these weapons are just tools. It's the skill and courage of soldiers like you that will make the difference." As Hawkins rejoined her squad, Ilara couldn't help but feel a glimmer of hope. For months, humanity had been on the defensive, retreating from world after world. But now, for the first time, they had a real chance to strike back. In her mind's eye, Ilara could almost see it. Squads of human soldiers, vibroblades glowing with energy, charging through Zarthak energy barriers that had once seemed impenetrable. It was an image straight out of science fiction or fantasy, and yet it was about to become reality. As she watched the soldiers begin their training, Ilara allowed herself a moment of reflection. They had named the project Excalibur, after the legendary sword of King Arthur. In those old stories, Excalibur had been a symbol of righteous power, a tool to unite a kingdom and defeat seemingly insurmountable foes. Now, humanity had forged its own Excalibur, and like the knights of old, they would soon ride out to face their enemy, carrying with them the hopes and dreams of their entire species. The Zarthak believed the war was all but won. They had no idea that humanity was about to rewrite the rules of engagement. As Ilara Chen watched the soldiers train, she allowed herself to believe, for the first time in years, that humanity might just survive this war after all. Little did she know that the true test of Project Excalibur, and of humanity's resolve, was yet to come. The tide turns. Commander Krulvor stood motionless on the bridge of the Eternal Dominion, his compound eyes fixed on the holographic display of the Rigel system. The Zarthak fleet hung in high orbit around Rigel VI, a lush garden world that had been one of humanity's most prosperous colonies. Now it was the latest prize in the Imperium's relentless expansion. Final status report, Krulvor chittered, his mandibles clicking softly in anticipation. Sub-Commander Zixara's exoskeleton rippled with bioluminescent patterns as she responded. All planetary defenses have been neutralized, Commander. The human resistance on the surface has been reduced to isolated pockets. Our ground forces are proceeding with the final sweep. Krulvor allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. Another world added to the glory of the Zarthak Imperium. Soon, they would have a clear path to Earth itself. Excellent. Prepare a report for. An alarm blared, cutting off his words. The holographic display flickered, showing a new cluster of signals appearing at the edge of the system. Multiple hyperspace signatures detected. A sensor officer called out, his chittering rapid with alarm. It's a human fleet. Krulvor's antenna twitched in surprise. A counterattack. Here. Impossible. The humans had been in full retreat for months. They didn't have the resources for an offensive. How many ships? He demanded. Zixara's bioluminescence pulsed with confusion as she analyzed the data. Only a dozen, Commander. Mostly frigates and destroyers, with a single cruiser. Krulvor's surprise turned to derision. A dozen ships against our fleet. This isn't an attack, it's suicide. Prepare tow. He never finished the order. The human ships accelerated to attack speed, but instead of launching a conventional assault, they did something unprecedented. Small craft began pouring from their hangars. Not fighter jets, but what looked like drop pods. They're launching a ground assault. Zixara clicked in disbelief. Against our superior numbers. Krulvor's mind raced. This made no tactical sense, unless it's a desperate rescue mission, he concluded. They're trying to extract high-value targets from the surface. Deploy interceptors. I want those drop pods destroyed before they enter the atmosphere. Swarms of Zarthak fighters surged forth from the fleet, streaking towards the incoming human craft. Energy weapons flared, filling space with deadly light. But the human pods were fast and maneuverable, jinking and weaving through the barrage. Over half of them made it through, plummeting towards the planet's surface. On the ground, the scattered human resistance fighters couldn't believe their eyes as they saw the pods streaking through the sky. In a bunker near the planet's capital, Colonel Jake Foster watched in awe as one of the pods crashed through the canopy of a nearby forest. Collins, Ramirez with me, he barked, grabbing his rifle. Let's see what cavalry Earth sent us. They approached the pod cautiously, weapons raised. The hatch blew open with a hiss of hydraulics and a figure emerged. Foster's jaw dropped. It was a soldier, but unlike any he'd seen before. Clad in sleek, form-fitting armor, the warrior carried what looked like a sword. Colonel Foster. The soldier called out, her voice firm and confident. Sergeant Maria Hawkins, Earth Special Forces. We're here to turn this fight around. Before Foster could respond, the air was split by the scream of Zarthak dropships. A squad of alien warriors, each nearly 7 feet tall with their insectoid exoskeletons, landed nearby, energy weapons powering up. "Get down," Foster yelled, raising his rifle. But Hawkins was already moving. She charged straight at the Zarthak, her sword humming to life with an otherworldly glow. Foster watched in disbelief as she closed the distance. The lead Zarthak fired, its energy bolt speeding towards Hawkins, only to dissipate harmlessly against her armor. Then she was among them. The sword moved in a blur, passing through the Zarthak's energy shields as if they weren't there. One alien fell, then another. The others tried to engage in close combat, but Hawkins was a whirlwind of deadly precision. In less than a minute, it was over. 6 Zarthak warriors lay dead, and Hawkins stood unscathed. She turned to Foster, who was still staring in shock. "Colonel, we don't have much time. I need you to gather your forces. We're taking this planet back." Similar scenes were playing out across HFY as the human strike teams engaged the occupying Zarthak forces. For the first time in the war, it was the aliens who found themselves outmatched in close combat. On the Eternal Dominion, Krelvor received increasingly panicked reports from his ground forces. "Impossible," he chittered, mandibles clicking rapidly in agitation. "How are they penetrating our shields?" Zixera's bioluminescent patterns swirled with confusion and fear. "Unknown, Commander. But our forces are being routed. The humans are. They're using some kind of energy blades. Our shields are useless against them." Krelvor's mind raced. This changed everything. If the humans had developed a way to bypass their most crucial defensive technology. "Recall all forces to orbital positions," he ordered. "We need to regroup and reassess." As the Zarthak forces began a hasty retreat from the surface, the human resistance fighters emerged from hiding, joining the Earth Special Forces in pushing the aliens back. In the capital city, Sergeant Hawkins stood atop a destroyed Zarthak walker, her vibroblade raised high. Around her, a growing crowd of human colonists cheered, hope rekindled in their eyes. Colonel Foster approached her, shaking his head in amazement. "I don't know what miracle you people brought with you, but thank you. We thought we were done for." Hawkins nodded grimly. "The fight's not over yet, Colonel. But for the first time, we've got them on the run, and we're not stopping until we've taken back every world they've stolen from us." As night fell on HFY, bonfires were lit in the rubble-strewn streets of the capital. The sound of celebration filled the air, not just for a single victory, but for the rekindling of hope in a war that had seemed all but lost. In orbit, the Zarthak fleet hung back, wary of further human tricks. Commander Krelvor stared at the blue-green orb of HFY, his earlier confidence shattered. "Send word to the Imperium," he ordered Zixera. "The humans have developed new weapons technology. The war has entered a new phase." As his words were transmitted across the vast distances of space, Krelvor felt a sensation he had never experienced before: doubt. For the first time, he wondered if perhaps the Zarthak had underestimated these humans. On Earth, in the depths of the Mars facility, Dr. Ilara Chen received the first reports of Project Excalibur's success in the field. As she read the accounts of the battle, a mix of relief and determination washed over her. They had changed the course of the war, yes, but this was just the beginning. The Zarthak would adapt, would develop new strategies. But now, humanity had hope. And sometimes, hope was the most powerful weapon of all. Clash of steel and stars. The Zarthak High Command was in chaos. Reports flooded in from across the galaxy, each more alarming than the last. Human forces, armed with their mysterious new weapons, were launching daring raids on occupied worlds. Zarthak supply lines were being disrupted, communication relays destroyed, and for the first time in the war, the mighty Imperium found itself on the defensive. In the heart of Zarthak space, on their throne world of Zarthak Prime, the Imperium's ruling council convened an emergency session. The normally orderly proceedings devolved into a cacophony of clicking mandibles and flashing bioluminescent patterns as the counselors argued over how to respond to this unprecedented threat. High Commander Vexlar, the supreme leader of the Zarthak military, stepped forward, his massive form towering over the other counselors. Silence. He boomed, his voice carrying the harmonics that demanded absolute obedience from his species. The chamber fell quiet. "We have underestimated these humans for too long," Vexlar continued. "Their resilience and adaptability pose a greater threat than we anticipated. But we are the Zarthak. We have conquered 1,000 worlds. We will not be undone by primitives with glowing swords." He turned to a holographic display, highlighting a particular star system. "We will make our stand here, at Proxima Centauri. The humans have been pushing towards this system, no doubt seeing it as a stepping stone to their homeworld. We will mass our forces and crush this human offensive once and for all." As the Zarthak began to mobilize for what they hoped would be a decisive battle, the human fleet was indeed preparing for its most ambitious operation yet. Aboard the UNSS Excalibur, the newly commissioned flagship of Earth's rejuvenated fleet, Admiral Helena Summers stood before a gathering of ship captains and ground force commanders. The briefing room buzzed with a nervous energy. Everyone knew the stakes of the coming engagement. "Ladies and gentlemen," Summers began, her voice steady and determined, "in 48 hours, we launch Operation Avalon. Our objective is the Proxima Centauri system. Intelligence suggests the Zarthak have begun fortifying the system, anticipating our advance. They're right to be worried." She gestured to the holographic display, which showed the planned deployment of their forces. "This will be our largest operation since the fall of New Eden. For the first time, we have a real chance to push the Zarthak back and secure a foothold near Earth. Failure is not an option." As the briefing continued, detailing the intricate dance of ships, fighters, and ground forces that would be required to take the system, one figure sat quietly at the back of the room. Dr. Ilara Chen, the architect of Project Excalibur, listened intently, her mind racing with calculations and potential scenarios. When the briefing concluded, Admiral Summers approached her. "Dr. Chen, I want to thank you again for agreeing to join us on this mission. Having you on hand to deal with any issues that might arise with the Excalibur units could make all the difference." Ilara nodded, a mix of determination and anxiety churning in her stomach. "I just hope I can be of use, Admiral. I'm not exactly trained for frontline combat." Summers smiled reassuringly. "Let's hope it doesn't come to that. But your insights could be crucial. The Zarthak will have had time to analyze our new weapons. They may have developed countermeasures. We need you here to help us stay one step ahead." As the human fleet prepared to jump to Proxima Centauri, tension mounted on both sides. The Zarthak, for the first time in their long history of conquest, found themselves facing an enemy that had managed to overcome their technological superiority. The humans, buoyed by their recent victories, but all too aware of the precarious nature of their advantage, steeled themselves for what could be the defining battle of the war. The clash, when it came, was unlike anything either side had experienced before. The space around Proxima Centauri erupted in a dazzling display of energy weapons, missile barrages, and swarms of fighter craft. The Zarthak had indeed massed a formidable fleet, outnumbering the human forces nearly 2-1. But numbers alone were no longer enough to guarantee victory. The human ships, though fewer, fought with a coordination and adaptability that kept the Zarthak off balance. Squadrons of fighters equipped with miniaturized versions of the Excalibur technology tore through Zarthak formations, their energy blades slicing through shields and hulls alike. On the bridge of the UNSS Excalibur, Admiral Summers directed the battle with calm precision. "Group 3, push forward and engage their left flank. Bomber Squadron Delta, you have a clear run at their command ship. Take it out." As the space battle raged, drop pods streaked towards the surface of Proxima, the system's habitable planet. The Zarthak had established a significant presence there, and taking control of the world was crucial to securing the system. Among the drop pods was one carrying Dr. Ilara Chen, along with a squad of Earth's elite Excalibur wielders, led by the now legendary Sergeant Maria Hawkins. As they plummeted through the atmosphere, Ilara clutched her safety harness, her scientific mind racing to process the battle data streaming through her neural link. The pod slammed into the planet's surface with bone-jarring force. Before Ilara could fully regain her senses, Hawkins was already moving. Perimeter secure. Dr. Chen, stay close. We're heading for the Zarthak Command Center. As they emerged from the pod, Ilara's eyes widened at the chaos around her. The sky was filled with streaking ships and energy blasts, while on the ground, human and Zarthak forces clashed in a furious melee. The Excalibur blades hummed and flashed, cutting through Zarthak defenses, but the aliens fought back with a ferocity born of desperation. Then Ilara saw something that made her blood run cold. A squad of Zarthak warriors advanced, wielding what looked like crude imitations of the Excalibur blades. "Sergeant Hawkins," she called out. "They've adapted. Those weapons." Hawkins nodded grimly. "I see them, Doc. Looks like this fight just got a whole lot more interesting." As human and Zarthak forces clashed in a surreal mix of advanced technology and what amounted to futuristic swordplay, Ilara realized that the outcome of this battle, and perhaps the war itself, might hinge on her ability to analyze and counter these new Zarthak weapons on the fly. The battle for Proxima Centauri had begun in earnest, and with it, a new chapter in the war between humanity and the Zarthak Imperium. The stars themselves seemed to hold their breath, waiting to see which species would emerge victorious from this clash of steel and cosmic fury. A new era dawns. The battle for Proxima Centauri raged for days, a titanic struggle that would be remembered for generations to come. In space, human and Zarthak ships danced a deadly waltz, their energy weapons painting the void with streaks of light. On the surface of Proxima, the conflict took on an almost mythical quality, as warriors wielding energy blades clashed amidst the ruins of alien cities and the wild, untamed landscapes of the planet. Dr. Ilara Chen found herself in the heart of the ground war, her scientific mind working overtime to analyze the Zarthak's countermeasures to the Excalibur technology. With Sergeant Hawkins and her team providing protection, Ilara moved from skirmish to skirmish, gathering data and making real-time adjustments to the human weapons. "Their blades are crude imitations," Ilara explained breathlessly as they took cover behind the wreckage of a Zarthak walker. "They've managed to replicate some of the shield-penetrating properties, but the energy modulation is unstable. If we can—" Her words were cut short as a Zarthak warrior lunged at them, its makeshift energy blade humming ominously. Sergeant Hawkins moved with lightning speed, parrying the attack and countering with a swift strike that left the alien crumpled on the ground. "Less talking, more fixing, Doc," Hawkins grunted, her eyes scanning for more threats. Ilara nodded, her fingers flying over her portable interface. "I'm transmitting new frequency patterns to all Excalibur units now. It should give us an edge over their copies." As the battle wore on, the tide began to turn in humanity's favor. In space, Admiral Summers' strategic brilliance, combined with the superior maneuverability of the human fleet, allowed them to slowly but surely dismantle the Zarthak formations. On the ground, the upgrades provided by Dr. Chen gave the human forces the advantage they needed to push back against the alien defenders. High above the planet, aboard his flagship, Commander Krulvor watched in disbelief as his carefully laid plans crumbled. "This is impossible," he chittered, his mandibles clicking furiously. "We are the Zarthak. We do not lose." Sub-Commander Zixera approached cautiously, her bioluminescent patterns conveying a mix of fear and resignation. "Commander, we've lost contact with our ground forces. The humans have taken the main command center. Our fleet is in disarray. We must consider retreat." Krulvor turned on her, his compound eyes flashing with rage. "Retreat? The Zarthak do not retreat. We will fight to the last." His words were cut short as the ship rocked violently, Alarms blared throughout the bridge. Multiple hull breaches, a sensor officer called out. "We've been boarded." Even as Krelivor tried to process this new threat, the doors to the bridge burst open. A team of human soldiers stormed in, led by a familiar face, Sergeant Maria Hawkins, her Excalibur blade humming with deadly energy. "Commander Krelivor," Hawkins called out, her voice steady and determined. "In the name of the United Earth Government, I demand your immediate surrender." For a long moment, silence reigned on the bridge. Krelivor looked from the human soldiers to his own crew, seeing the defeat in their eyes. With a gesture that seemed to encompass all of his species' shattered pride, he lowered his weapons. "We surrender," he chittered, the words tasting like ash in his mouth. As news of the Zarthak surrender at Proxima Centauri spread across the galaxy, the impact was seismic. On a dozen worlds, Zarthak occupation forces found themselves surrounded by emboldened human resistance fighters. The Zarthak Imperium, once thought invincible, began to fracture as outlying colonies sued for peace. In the aftermath of the battle, Dr. Ilara Chen stood on a hilltop overlooking the sprawling alien cityscape of Proxima's capital. Admiral Summers approached, a weary but satisfied expression on her face. "Dr. Chen," the Admiral greeted her warmly, "I wanted to personally thank you for your contributions. Your work here, under fire no less, was nothing short of extraordinary." Ilara nodded, still processing the enormity of what had transpired. "Thank you, Admiral. But I can't help wondering, what happens now? We've won a great victory, but the war isn't over." Summers gazed out at the horizon, where human and Zarthak medical teams worked side by side to treat the wounded of both species. "No, it's not over. But today marks the beginning of a new era. For the first time, we're negotiating with the Zarthak as equals, not as conquerors and conquered." She turned back to Ilara, her eyes shining with possibility. "Your Excalibur project didn't just give us a weapon, Doctor. It gave us a chance to rewrite the rules of engagement, to show that humanity's greatest strength isn't our technology or our firepower, but our ability to adapt, to think creatively in the face of overwhelming odds." As the sun set on Proxima, casting the alien world in a warm, golden glow, Ilara felt a surge of hope for the future. The war had been costly, with scars that would take generations to heal. But in rising to meet the Zarthak threat, humanity had discovered new strengths within itself. In the days and weeks that followed, as peace talks began and reconstruction efforts got underway, a new galactic order started to take shape. The Zarthak, humbled by their defeat, began the long process of reforming their society. Many human colonies, once thought lost forever, were reclaimed and rebuilt. And on Earth, in the halls of government and in scientific institutions around the world, discussions turned to the future. The universe, they had learned, was a far more complex and dangerous place than they had ever imagined. But humanity had proven itself equal to the challenge. As Dr. Ilara Chen returned to her laboratory on Mars, her mind was already racing with new ideas. The Excalibur project had been just the beginning. With the knowledge gained from Zarthak technology and the lessons learned in the crucible of war, who knew what marvels humanity might create next? The stars, once a distant dream, now beckoned with infinite possibility, and humanity, battle-tested and united as never before, stood ready to answer their call.